Hello, I'm Karma Kitaj, and I'm your host for A Livelihood, New Adventures as We Age. And we interview people over age 50 who are doing some new and wonderful things. Today I'm going to introduce you to Judith Steinbergh. She is Poet Laureate of Brookline, Mass. And welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Karma. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me as a guest.
That's nice, yeah. So we are going to want to talk about how you got to be Poet Laureate of Brookline, and the first one at that, right?
Yes, yes.
So what does the Poet Laureate do in Brookline, Massachusetts?
Well, when I was selected, which was in April of 2012, I was given a list of things that I might be interested in doing, but I would say, to sum it up, that that I would reach out to the community, all ages in the community, to use poetry and maybe song as a way to engage the community together and appreciate the town and its great literary activity. In the spring of this year, I started to think of other ways to reach out to the community and really focus on Brookline itself. And so through the schools and the senior center and other organizations, I invited people to submit poems and songs that were related to Brookline places and people. And over the spring and summer, I gathered together maybe 60 or 70 poems by people of all ages, all the way from 8 years old to 80. And then, during the summer, I learned slowly how to make a website, and I was able to publish most of those poems.
Why don't you talk about some of what you've done before you
Sure.
became a Poet Laureate?
Well, it started back when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and when I first learned to write a little bit in a small town in western Pennsylvania. And my father really liked verse, and he also played the violin, interested in music. And when I was old enough, he showed me how to write birthday card verses, so sentimental feelings that rhymed. And I specialized in that for several years, I'd say. I wrote birthday cards and anniversary cards. And
So do you mean you specialized as a child?
yeah, yes, occasional verse. That's what we would call it now,
Okay.
occasional verse. And then in high school, I went to a small school in Pittsburgh, and I had a wonderful teacher. Her name was Helen Moore, and she was my creative writing teacher, and she really was the first person who introduced me to the great poets of America and the British poets, and fostered my own writing. She was very interested in the writing that I wanted to do, and I think that she was really influential in shaping what I would become. And then in college, I was able to study with X.J. Kennedy, who's a wonderful poet who lives in one of the suburbs of Boston, and he's very active in the poetry community. And I even took a course with Brookline's own David Ferry, the eminent David Ferry, when I was in college, and he was a young professor at Wellesley. As an adult, I continued to study with poets in the Boston area. Some of those were Ruth Whitman, who lived in Brookline and wrote many books of poetry, and Kathleen Spivak. And as I became, as I taught more and more in the circles of the schools surrounding Brookline and Boston,
When you say taught, you mean you taught poetry? Right.
I did, although I actually taught as a specialist in Brookline 1 day a week for 21 years. And I taught in the Wenham Public Schools for 4 years as a visiting poet, but that was full time.
Right, so this has been in your blood almost forever.
Yes, yeah, it's really, it's been a long time.
So I know you've not only taught in Brookline and I guess towns like that, but you've also taught in an inner city school, haven't you?
I have. I've taught, I've done 4 long partnerships in Boston schools, and that has been through an organization I helped to co-found, which is Troubadour, Literacy Through Writing and Song, and I co-founded that with Victor Coburn long ago, and he's still the executive director.
Songwriter.
Yes,
right?
Songwriter, producer, and teacher in literacy through songs.
I know you taught in a school with, I think it was 5th graders, right?
Yes, I did.
And we actually have a little clip of a young boy reading a poem that he wrote in one of your classes. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
in the 5th grade classroom at the Taylor School in Mattapan.
Yeah.
Title of my poem is Skateboarding. Pushing and powerfully pumping, feeling the freezing cold air rushing on my face, taking my breath away. Feeling that I have all control of my motions and emotions. I start to bend my knees, getting set for the trick. Feeling the hard, scaly grip tape with the sound of my wheels rolling over the cracks on the sidewalk. I pop the tail, getting ready for the trick. My heart is racing. I'm in the air, seeing everything around me. Bunch of kids and thousands of cars going by, like the whole world just paused for a second. Then, slam.
I think you told me a big proportion of the children in this school are of Haitian heritage, right?
Yes, maybe 60-65% of the children came from Haiti, and maybe another 20% from other Caribbean countries.
Right.
So most of the children were English language learners, and the teachers were just wonderful in using many writing genres to help children learn English. And that particular video was really a record of how children felt about their writing in relationship to their learning English during their time there.
To learning English.
Yes.
So you also began to publish books at some point. And when was your first book published?
Well, I started making books when I was a little girl, just like kids do now in kindergarten and 1st grade. They write their stories and do the art and bind them together. And I did that when I was little too, and I always loved to make books. And so I guess my first book was published right out of college when my brother, a photographer, Carrie Walensky, and I made a book together, and we said, oh, let's just take it to New York and see if we could get it published, and it turned out we did. And then after that, I published a series of poetry books. There are 5 in all. The most recent is called Writing My Will, and 3 textbooks that address teaching poetry in the classroom with different age children.
So you have a poem that you are going to read us.
I
right?
do. This is a poem that is the first poem in my book, Writing My Will, which is a collection of poetry and some essays. And this poem is called What I Want to Give Away. What I want to give away are certain words that have run through my life like weather or tides, repeating themselves. Godisha, I borrowed once from a woman, and galaxy, Sajura, words whose sounds fly away from their meanings like blinding sparks, or meanings that have not yet grown their words, merely hovered near me with a kind of heat, and poems I have loved like sisters, their lines clothing me in embroidered cotton skirts, and tart taste of blackberries right off the backyard vines, the smell of the cottage at Keezer Lake, just opened in June, a permanent musk, with spiders still curled in the window frames, little balls of lace. Who will have these jewels? Overlook the heirlooms, china, silver, rings, for the real treasures, my darlings. Believe me, what I am giving out, sting, scent, and the estate of the soul is the only testament of worth. Being of song, mind, and body, I make my will. Judith.
What do you suppose gave you the impulse to write this poem?
Well, in my family, and probably in a lot of families, you know, your parents say, well, you know, someday you'll have this ring, or someday you'll have your grandmother's china, or this lace tablecloth came from Belgium during the war. And those are things actually that I have received some of from the generations who preceded me, and I value those. But when I was thinking about my children when they were younger, and just the kinds of things that I really valued. I thought that language and the power of words and the music of poems and songs, that those are the things that I wanted to make sure that they would value after I'm gone.
Well, thank you, Judy.